Hey guys, if you want to get more done in less time, then you need to watch this video. Now, if you're like me and you're watching this, you probably see people like Tony Robbins and Elon Musk, and you're like, holy crap, how do they get so much done in a single day? And if you're also like me, you want to reach that next level of productivity. But some nights I just find myself binge watching Netflix on the couch, eating Cheetos, and feeling really regretful or shameful for not getting the things done that I know I need to do, right? It just seems like there's not enough time in the day and I just can't do it. But luckily for you and for me, I found these 3 laws of productivity that I'm going to be sharing here to help you get to that next level if you follow them, and not only get more things done in a single day, but also get closer to the life that you want to have. So let's go ahead and dive in. Hey guys, it's Adam over at Teach You Freedom, where, as you know, it is our mission to help you remove the mental and emotional barriers that are keeping you from living life on your terms. On today's mastery lesson, we're talking everything productivity, right? How do we get more done in less time? But not only that, in building my coaching practice and working with people, I realized there's really 3 main fallacies of productivity that people fall into, right? They don't know where to put their time and attention. They don't know how to spend that time that they're investing. And then thirdly, they just need to get started. They don't know how to get started and get in motion to do the things that they know they need to do, right? So in this mastery lesson, we're going to be covering all 3 of those. Let's go ahead and just dive in, right? I'm excited. Let's go ahead and dive into the first big idea. So big idea number 1 is the 80-20 principle, or the Pareto Principle. And in a nutshell, this principle states that a majority of the outputs or results that we get stem from a small minority of the inputs or efforts, right? Essentially, there's certain tasks or things that we do that have a disproportional amount of output compared to how much time we invest in it. And our goal in utilizing this principle for productivity is figuring out what levers and activities we can press on to get disproportional rewards for the amount of input that we're putting. This was discovered by a guy named Vilfredo Pareto, who studied Italian landowners in the 1800s, and he basically saw that 80% of the land in Italy at that time was owned by about 20% of the people. And he's like, holy crap, this is mind-blowing. I wonder if this affects any other domain, right? And what he saw is that this is basically a human, fundamental law. We see it all over the place. He saw it in his own backyard. He saw that 80% of his peas came from about 20% of his plants. We know that about 80% of crime is committed by 20% of individuals. We know that about 80% of your sales or revenue comes from a small minority, about 20% of your products, all over the flipping place, right? So what we need to do in our lives is figure out where these dials are and then push on them to get disproportional rewards. Now you might be saying, Adam, that's great, Phil, for Vilfredo in the 1800s. How does this apply to me and my productivity? Well, there's really 2 ways that this shows up. First and foremost, it shows up in what activities that we decide to put our time and attention to, but it also helps us all optimize and get bigger and better rewards. 80-20 principle is also called the Matthew principle, or the rich getting richer, and I'll explain that in a second. But first and foremost, how does it dictate where we focus our time and attention? Let's say you're getting ready for a test and you know that you can't study everything, right? You can't know it all. But in any test, about 80% of those questions are going to come from about 20% of the material. So instead of trying to study everything, what is the 20% of the material that you can study to get you 80% of the answers, right? And the reality is that the 80-20 principle is twofold. I need to focus on certain things that give you a majority of the outputs, but the other garbage is just diminishing returns, right? If you spent your time studying there, if you spent your time spending the 80% that give you 20% of the results, it'd be a waste of your time, right? Why not maximize it and study the 80% of the 20% of the material that gives you 80% of the rewards, right? So that's one way we can do it. Another way that I do this in my life is when I'm not changing the world with Teach You Freedom, I do business development for a technology consulting company. And I know that 80% of the sales I make that day are going to come from 20% of the people that already work with us. So you better believe that those first calls that I make in the day are to those people. I know that there's certain things where I can invest my time and get a disproportional amount of rewards. Now, the second way we can hack the 80-20 principle is when we get good at figuring out what these levers are and where to spend our time and attention, we can unlock disproportional rewards, right? I want to give you an example. Let's say you go to a pet store and you buy 3 goldfish, you bring them home and you put them in a tank. You feed them, and just by chance, one of those goldfish gets a little bit more food than the other 2. And because of that, he grows a little bit bigger. The next time you feed him, because that goldfish is a little bit bigger, he gets a little bit more food, a little bit more food, a little bit more food. Before you know it, that fish is 10x bigger than the other 2 fish, and he's eating about 80% plus of the food that you put in that tank. Now, the reality is that this didn't happen just by once. one-off chance. It's a feedback loop. And the 80-20 principle is a feedback loop for our own lives, right? If you want to be that big fat fish and eating most of the food, then what you need to do is get good at 80-20ing your 80-20, your 80-20, your 80-20, right? You can unlock disproportional amount of rewards and benefits if you solely focus on the most important thing. Because when you focus on the most important thing and then you 80-20 that, and then you 80-20 that, suddenly you have access to disproportional rewards that somebody over here doesn't have. So there's really two ways we can optimize this. Not only will it help us focus our time and attention, but it'll also unlock disproportional rewards for us to allow us to get bigger and better in whatever domain it is that we want to exceed in. All right, you guys, so big idea number 2 is Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law basically states that whatever task you want to get done, it will fill the amount of time you give it. And the more time you give something, the more complex it'll become. Have you ever wondered why you wait till midnight the day before a paper's due to actually get started? Or why you had a month to do a project and you wait till the last week to get started, right? It's a human law of nature that people procrastinate. We think we have more time than we actually do until we have that pressure of a deadline to get our butts into gear. So knowing that we'll actually fill the amount of time that we set out to do something, how can we utilize Parkinson's Law to become more productive? Well, there's a guy named Peter Thiel who's a co-founder of PayPal, and now he wrote a book called 0 to 1. In the book, he says, take your 10-year goal, which is really, something most people have and businesses have. It's, accepted in the business world. How do you take your 10-year goal and get it done in 6 months, he says. And you're like, holy crap, that sounds like a massive feat. But I want you to honestly think about this. If you put pen to paper, you could probably get pretty close to planning out how you could achieve that in 6 months. Another great thought, question that Tim Ferriss asked is, how can I get this task done in half the time? And to utilize Parkinson's Law, we need to get really good at asking ourselves these questions and then setting up self-constrained deadlines to hold us accountable, right? What we need to get really good at is how can we get what we want done in less time and imposing these constraints on ourselves. And I guarantee you'll be amazed with the results that you get. Ask yourself, how can I get this project done in half the time or a quarter of the time? Now, a lot of people ask me when I bring this up with my clients, they say, Adam, but won't your brain know that this is a self-imposed constraint and it doesn't really matter? And the reality is, yes, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it could be. How do we get around that? Well, we build external accountability a couple different ways. Tell all your friends, family members, whoever, that you're getting this task done in this amount of time, and they'll help hold you accountable. A second way we can get around this is put some cash on the line, put your time on the line, right? Give somebody a check for $100 and say, hey, if I don't get this done, cash that bad boy, the money's yours, right? So there's ways that we can build external accountability as well as internal accountability. So in review, Parkinson's Law is whatever task you set out to do will fill the amount of time you give it, and to remedy this, we need to create self-constraints around how much time we're gonna give somebody to give a task to set up that pressure system to get that task done. All right, so big idea number 3 is overcoming inertia. In the last 2 big ideas, we talked about where to focus our time and how to use that time, but what if you just need help getting started? And when I think about overcoming inertia, I think of Newton's first law of motion, right? An object at rest will stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. Right now, we are those objects at rest and we need to get in motion. So here's 3 tactics you can use to get in motion. The first tactic that I want to share with you is the 2-minute rule, which I learned from David Allen's Getting Things Done. If you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. It's the Bible of productivity. Turn this video off and go buy it right now. But it basically says that if something takes less than 2 minutes to do, just do it and get it done, right? It's not worth filling up your mental space and putting on a to-do list to get done later and putting off. Just get it done right now. One reason is you're just gonna feel great about getting that checked off and getting it done. And secondly, it's not gonna take up space. It's not gonna pile up until you have a bunch of small 2-minute things to do that ends up taking 30 minutes or 45 minutes to get done, right? I don't know about you, but I love just getting small things done. It makes me feel amazing and it gets it out of my head so I don't have to worry about it later. Now, the second tactic that I wanna share with you guys is the 5-minute rule. The 5-minute rule basically states that there's something that you know you need to do and you don't want to do it, just do it for 5 minutes and either 2 things are going to happen. One, you're going to do it for 5 minutes, say, screw it, I'm done, and you're going to be at least 5 minutes closer to that project that you were working on or that thing you were doing. Second is you're going to do it for 5 minutes. You're going to overcome that initial barrier of getting started and that self-talk of how much you don't want to do it. And you're actually going to enjoy it and want to keep going, right? I use this all the time in my French practice, right? Learning a new language is really difficult. I don't know if you guys are learning a new language, but it's really difficult for me. And I do it later in the day. And when there's nothing else I would rather be doing than watching Netflix or going to bed early, right? So I say, I'm going to do it for 5 minutes. I start doing flashcards. I start practicing some practice problems. Before you know it, I'm doing it for 15, 20, 30 minutes, right? Just because once you get started, you want to keep going. Once you're in motion, you want to stay in motion. Now, the third tactic I want to share with you guys I'm just making this up. I don't know if it's called anything. If you've made this up before, let me know what you call it, but I'm just calling it the 1, 2, 3 rule, okay? When there's something you know you need to do and you don't want to do it, just do the first 3 tasks involved with that task. I use this a lot when I'm journaling, okay? I'll say, I don't really want to journal today. I don't want to review my day, but I'm just going to grab the pen. I'm going to grab my notebook. I'm going to flip the page open. And literally just by doing the first couple things, you want to keep going because of your emotion, right? Let's say you know you need to go work out, but it's the last thing you want to do. Put on your shoes, put on your clothes, and walk out the door. Before you know it, you're going to be running around the block, and you're going to feel great and want to keep going. So those are the 3 tactics you can use to get in motion and stay in motion. In summary, the 3 fundamental laws of productivity are 1, 80-20 principle, where are you going to put your time and attention? 2, Parkinson's law, how are you going to spend that time and actually get things done in less time? And then thirdly, overcoming inertia by implementing the 2-minute rule, the 5-minute rule, and the 1, 2, 3 rule to actually get in motion and stay in motion. Now, if you guys like this video, I would love to know what your favorite big idea was. Please share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what things you want to see in the future. I would really, really appreciate it. And yeah, if I don't see you guys down in the comments, I'll see you on next week's mastery lesson.